You said it really well this morning, and I really appreciate it because I figured like my whole 15-year cultivation career is all bro science based until you came along. So
bro science is based in facts. It's just not always. Nobody knows exactly where the fact lies, but there's factual information that supports it.
I would agree.
Some more than others, but there's always a grain of truth.
What's up, guys? Oh, geez, gosh. Sorry. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Grow Room Weekly. We've got Dr. John and Tim here today. We're gonna be going over the differences between our LED and our HPS room and talk about the differences with LED, how to run them, the fact that like LEDs penetrate deeper into the canopy and compared to an HPS, and
okay. We'll talk about it.
All right,
I guess.
Right. I think I've always thought, maybe it's bro science, but I've always thought LEDs penetrate deeper into the canopy.
Huh?
No? Yes?
It's a complex question.
All right, well.
Or statement, I guess.
We're gonna see if the bro science wins on this one. We're gonna see. So room 2, it's day 15 in here for the, what is this, Lance and Versace?
Yep.
And then we've got 2 rows of blue Zushi, that's on day 5. HPS room, we're doing a comparison to HPS LED. Cool thing to note is room 2 and room 1 are identical. The only difference being the type of lighting up top. So the 28 light seats, same HVAC, dehum setup, everything the same, Under-Canopy, all the same. So really cool to qualify the differences in the 2 rooms. And what I'm starting to find is like liking the LED a little bit, but we'll get into that. I've been an HPS grower for, I don't know, 15 years. So this is kind of what I know the most. What's a trial in here? I can't remember.
Far red duration.
Oh, that's right.
5 minutes end of day versus 30 minutes end of day.
First front half of the room is 5 minutes end of day?
Most of the front half. There's a small treatment zone in the back because I didn't know if it was going to fuck things up. So try and keep it controlled.
So in talking about HPS versus LED, obviously there's a heat load aspect with HPS that we've just grown to understand after years of using them. And that's one of the reasons why the switch to LED was kind of difficult because people were running their rooms like an HPS room. But that's the infrared, correct?
Yep, and that's about 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's a big deal.
Increase, yeah. Leaf surface.
Especially when VPD comes into play, so that's a big deal.
Closer you get,
the higher, of course.
So at this distance, more like the 4.
Okay. And something that I like to do, and this is just rule of thumb that I do not like going over 950 par under an HPS bulb. The blue Zushi, fun fact, the blue Zushi's sitting at about 750 to 800 at all times. It does not love light intensity, so that's like the perfect amount for it. But I like to stay 900, 950. I don't really like going over 1,000, whereas LED, I'm pretty comfortable up to 1,100.
Yeah, 1,200 I see pretty frequently.
Of course he wants 1,200. All the science guys like 1,200.
Yes, science!
So yeah, I'm in the same boat, whereas like HPS is like, it's easier. When we first turned the facility on, we loved this room because it's like, it made us feel, we have 4 different rooms, they're all different, so it made us feel more at home. As we've gone on though, we're getting better flavor translation on the smoke from LED rooms. Is that something you have seen in your previous R&D?
So depends on the genetics. So some genetics are really predisposed to performing better under HPS from what I've seen.
Yeah.
Some genetics have unlocked potential out of LED.
Yeah.
And especially like the, those fruitier crosses, those less stable terpenes, do much better under LED.
Okay.
I mean, something that I tend to think does really well under HPS is like a Gelato.
Yeah.
Where you can get a really beautiful, nice product under LED for a Gelato, but the flavor translation and the aroma profile I've never seen it 1-to-1.
Okay.
I've always, every time I smoke them, I always have a preference for HPS grown Gelato crosses, Gelato dominant crosses. But
whereas like Zkittlez,
100%
LED.
For me, the preference is always LED.
Yeah,
because
100%.
I
was talking to Ted from Alien the other day on Friday, and he was like, "Oh yeah, their Zkittlez crosses. They'll only run them under LED because they know the flavor profile is so much greater."
Yeah.
And so our Proper Smoke League winning batch, Blue Zushi, came out of the LED room Whereas our Olympics that didn't win anything, unfortunately, came out of this room. And like, I'm not saying like it's only the bulb, right? It's only the lighting source. That's a lie. But, you know, makes you wonder a little bit, you know.
It's a holistic approach, right? So like if you're, you know, because they're matched 1-to-1 on HVAC, dehu, everything, you're having more of a heat load in here.
Yeah.
So you're going to be pushing those units harder.
Yep.
And you're going to have a little bit more of a challenge controlling that environment.
I would agree.
Than you would under the LED.
Yeah.
And that's how it always is. So, you know, you're going to expect to see a little bit more volatilization of those volatile compounds.
I agree.
Like terpenes and esters out at late stage flower out of an HPS room than you are out of an LED room.
Yeah. That tracks.
I think, though, none of it matters if you can't control your dry environment.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
Like, your post-harvest sucks, then doesn't matter what
it doesn't. That's where a lot of people struggle. We probably should do an episode on post-harvest.
Yeah.
Drop harvest in the comments if you want to see a post-harvest episode. But something to really note, like on the topic of PSL and smokability, most of the people on top of the PSL rankings, you know, proper smoke league rankings, they're running HPS up top and they're running R6s underneath. And the R6 was what I really loved when I did all of the trials back in the day for our previous employer.
Yep.
And I loved balancing out the top spectrum with a different spectrum underneath, right? Kind of rounding out the whole spectrum for the plant. And we came to call that spectrum balancing. I know, revolutionary term. But spectrum balancing being like HPS is heavy in red, orange, and yellow, whereas the R6 is heavier with a little more blue and, you know, full spectrum. So it really rounded out the full spectrum profile the plant was receiving.
And it's a better approach to balancing it out than a checkerboard top light situation.
I would agree.
Because of the uniformity at the plant level.
I would agree with that. And it really took me back to the days where we used to grow HPS and metal halide checkerboard, and those rooms were always the terpiest, always the stickiest. So when it came to like picking a spectrum to match with HPS, the R6 was a no-brainer for me. Yeah. But to each their own. If you run an R8 under HPS, you're obviously doing fine too. But I think it's important to note that the guys at the top that are winning a lot of these competitions are running R6 underneath.
Yeah, it depends on what your objective is.
Totally,
if your
100%.
objective is pushing yields the most, then you're gonna go more for a higher, you know, red spectrum, even on the Under-Canopy, which is gonna give you a higher output per your unit watt coming in.
Yep.
So it's a photon game at that point, like how much energy can you get to the plants.
Yep.
But if you're trying to really push quality be more than yield, like you'll sacrifice a little bit of yield in exchange for better quality, then spectrum tuning, like finding that better balance is 100%. The best approach.
And that's what's cool about the chroma. So if you have the chromas, running them at an R6 for a run and seeing if that brings a different flavor profile out of your flower could be a thing to check in. So that's all I got for room 2. Let's go over to the LED room and check it out.
Yeah,
let's
do it.
All right, later. All right, this room smells amazing. Crap, I don't know what day it is. All right, now we're good. Day 36 for the whole room, except for Blue Zushi, it's day 26. We've got Blue Zushi, Versace, Lance, and then the OG, and we topped the whole row of OG. Is that correct? It's looking a little better, but this one is still like, we've got to increase planting density to get that yield up. So room 1 is quickly becoming my favorite room. Again, identical to our HPS room that we were just in. 28 top lights, completely identical, just the different fixtures. It's really becoming my favorite room. Our most consistent room. Like really good smokability, really good quality out of here. I always struggled with pulling color out of LED rooms when LEDs first came on. We're not really having that issue, and we'll get some nice B-roll shots of the Lance to show you. So difference in here is we run this room a little warmer, a little more humid, right? Because in an HPS room, you've got the radiation from the HPS bulbs that kind of, like as you know, John touched on, kind of increases that leaf temp. So making sure you maintain leaf temperature, air temp, switching to LEDs, a little more higher of a VPD, or sorry, a little lower of a VPD around. We like that 1.1, 1.2 in here, mid-flower. It's been going great for us, but something that I said to John earlier, and he clapped back very quickly, was like, I have always been under the interpretation that LEDs penetrate the canopy greater than an HPS. And I think that may be some bro science that, I've been throwing around, and John likes to shoot it down every once in a while. But something he did say to me is that bro science is based in, you said it really well this morning, and I really appreciate it, because I figured like my whole 15-year cultivation career is all bro science based until you came along. So
bro science is based in facts. It's just not always, nobody knows exactly where the fact lies, but there's factual information that supports it.
I would agree.
Some more than others, but there's always a grain of truth. So,
and it gives us an area to like kind of a thread to pull on. Like, why do you believe that? I've always believed that LEDs penetrate deeper into the canopy, and you were like, a photon is a photon. So is that bro science?
I think it's a very complex answer, cop out. But a photon coming in at, hit 400 nanometers, whether it's from an LED or from an HPS, it's the same. And so, basically, if you were able to one-to-one replicate an HPS fixture with LED and include the heat load that goes into it, all inclusive, you should get the exact same response. But so, the difference is that, leaf architecture, the thickness of the leaf, so the cuticle thickness of the leaf, all of these things, the shape of the plant is all going to be different under LED and HPS because they're different spectrums. And that's going to influence light penetration. The ability of that light to get down in, the spectrum of that light is going to change it. I got some fucking thing in my eye.
So because the spectrum under LEDs is quite different.
Yes.
Right, so you're not really, it's comparing apples to oranges really when you say LEDs penetrate deeper. Well, it's because HPS is a completely different spectrum.
Yeah, I think it's just more the plant's response indicates, because if I were to take a light meter and put it into the canopy and be able to get a reproducible result, like take 100 different measurements and here and 100 different measurements in there in the same relative spot, and it's the same amount, the same PPFD from top, is there going to be a measurable difference in the light penetration, the actual amount? I don't know. Something we could test.
Yeah, there could.
So we need to hire another person to do that.
Yeah, we need a lot more hands to get that test. Something that you brought up, because you've done a lot of breeding in your past lives, is that breeding under LED and HPS, and that plant's predisposition to taking a liking to one light source or the other, big deal. And so there's a lot of people who are, there's a lot of breeding going on. There's a lot of crosses that are coming out very quickly. Well, it matters what you're breeding under and what you're trialing those plants under, correct?
It matters more what you're selecting under.
Okay.
So if you're pheno hunting and you're selecting your strains under an HPS room, then you're, predisposing your selection or artificially selecting based on the phenotypic response of that plant or like the characteristics of that plant under that light source. So if I were to run a program where, I'm looking for the fruitiest, terpiest strains, I'm probably gonna grow those out under LED to try and look at what their maximum potential is versus under HPS, where I'm gonna lose a lot of that later on and probably get rid of a lot of genetics that I may actually really, really like, but are gonna only be kind of exclusively LED grown genetics. Just like you take an indoor strain, you throw it outside.
For sure.
It doesn't even look remotely the same.
Even greenhouse to outdoor, completely different. So that makes sense. So if you are breeding and you are predominantly an LED grower, you need to be breeding under and selecting under, not breeding, but selecting under an LED bulb.
Breeding under different light sources, I mean, I've seen like viability differences, but nothing that I can track long term. But certainly, that's going to influence like seed set, pollen viability, but that's like ambient room environmentals and the impact on the influence of the light.
So when it comes to like the actual, what you're selecting for your brand, because we all have to run a menu these days, right? Consumers are very picky. They need a lot more variety. We all have to run multiple genetics per room and sometimes multiple genetics per bench. It's very important that you're selecting those genetics under the lights that you will be flowering under. And the guys at Blueprint have said this, Mitten Master have said this for years, but it's very, very important to get that consistency and that final product that you're really looking for your consumers as well. I'm gonna say it, man, I've been growing under HPS for a long time, metal halide for a long time. This room 1 with the high bay LEDs is quickly becoming my favorite because we are getting such good smokability on the Blue Zushi. And like, man, Blue Zushi's just got my whole heart. I'm not gonna lie, man. Not gonna lie. So that's all I got. What about you?
That's it for me.
What's your favorite? What do you decide on? I was gonna say LED.
I tend to like HPS more.
Oh, I was wrong.
But, you know, it's just because the genetics that I like to smoke for the effects that I go for tend to perform better under HPS.
Okay.
But, you know, the control that you get under LED is something that is kind of hard to dispute.
Okay.
And you can get really good results for traditionally HPS selected strains, cultivated strains under LEDs with the right cultivation practices.
Yeah.
Where they are like neck and neck, but I give the edge to HPS. But then of course for something like Blue Zushi, you know.
Anything Z has got to be LED, man.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
And Z's nice, but it just doesn't give me enough of the effect that I'm looking for when I'm smoking.
John likes to get really high.
I want to turn my brain off. Because it goes all the time. It's nice to turn it off.
That's fair. I like Zushi because I like to smoke a little bit, get home, I do the family thing, and if I have a little bit of Zushi, I'm like very cognitive. I can still be a good dad and like do the family thing, and then I can turn my brain off later with some OG or some shit like that, you know? So that's fair. But that's what we got today's episode on HPS LED. If you have other questions about HPS or LED, the differences, the breeding, selecting, whatever it is, drop them in the comments. Like, subscribe, whatever. Tim, Dr. John, we're out.